Right, तो check करो मैं बिलाइन कह रहा मुझे उतने विनाडी की तरह दे दोनों पोते दे right. So good morning guys. So this is our second session in Tech Talk with Malith. So today our guest speaker is Mr. Janaka Rangama. Hi Janaka.
Hi Mikola, how are you doing, mate?
Good. And Janaka is one of the Microsoft Azure MVPs, as well as he's working for Dell. He's a technologist and a very good one in it. So today we have a discussion regarding Microsoft Intelligent Cloud and Edge. So actually, to put it in the basic language, because some of them don't know regarding this concept. So we are talking about cloud computing for basic knowledge. What we are telling is this is as cloud computing.
Yeah.
Not the cloud computing what the politicians in Sri Lanka telling that we have a lot of sayings in Sri Lanka that for example I think you don't know that some are saying that ahasatina datta gabadawa කියන එක තමයි කියන්නේ, that's not the word what we are using, but so we will have a wider discussion regarding this cloud computing and what are the concepts when it comes to Microsoft, what are the things we can support on this.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah, great.
Okay. Janaka, so to start this conversation, I like to ask, what is this cloud computing concept? When did it origin and start?
So thanks for having me on this show, Nicola. I really appreciate you having me on this show. So the basic understanding of a cloud computer or using a cloud service is that you're using a software or a service which is hosted in a central location. So that can be like a internet service provider like SLT in the case of Sri Lanka, or maybe it can be a bigger company like Microsoft or AWS. So this is actually coming from the idea or the notion of distributed computing, where you have a server farm or a huge compute farm, and using that platform, you present the services to the end user. So those services can be compute, storage, networking. So for an example, we are hosting this session via YouTube and Facebook Live. So Facebook and YouTube, these are services which are hosted in somewhere in the world in a server farm that is powered by the cloud computing. Yeah, that's the basic understanding of that.
Okay. So that's the concept, right? So when it's come to Microsoft, what are the approaches in Microsoft in cloud computing what we have?
Yeah, so I got a bit of it's easier to showcase that using a diagram, if I may. So let me actually share my screen so you can see it.
Okay.
All right. So now to give you an idea about what this intelligent cloud and intelligent edge is, and from a Microsoft perspective, what that is. So I'm sure that you're familiar with the Microsoft Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, things like that. So if you see at the right hand side of this photo, what you see here is the global compute, or the something that Microsoft or Google uses, their version of cloud that is available for the public. So that is what we call the hyperscale cloud. Now, if I take this example to explain what are the services available. Now, what you see here as inferencing, training data, they are pretty much related to AI. So using this massive cloud or the public cloud, you can use that to train AI models, to do software development, things like that, because the compute power is unlimited. I'm not hosting it, someone else is hosting it, and it has unlimited resources. Now, in the case of a service provider, it's different, right? You have limited capability and platforms and servers and things available, right? This is where you have integrated systems. Now, in today's topic, we are going to talk about a little bit about Azure, Azure Stack Hub, Azure Stack Edge. These are restrained by physical locations or the size. So this has a limited capacity. So it can do a subset of workloads that massive compute cloud could do. Now, for an example, if you use something like Azure Stack Hub, you can definitely do things like inferencing, training AI models, data modeling, things like that. But if you move to a further along the way in the product line to things like Azure Stack Edge, which is like a single server, a small server, which will provide you just enough compute. Now, for an example, when you have just a one server or a PC in a branch office, there's only a limited number of tasks that machine or the server can do, right? Not everything, but some.
Okay. So
now, if we move to things like using sensors, microcontrollers, IoT devices, these are actually connected to somewhat of a cloud. So, for an example, if you have an iPhone or an Apple Watch or things like that, there are a number of matrices, number of metadata that it collects, your body weight, your pace, your sleeping pattern, things like that. So that data, those devices are really good to collect those data, and those devices might not necessarily be able to process that data at that point. So at that stage, those data can be posted back to a cloud computing platform like Microsoft Azure or AWS or Google or whatever, and those data can be transformed into meaningful information. So this is the kind of like the taxonomy of this whole cloud to edge. So in this photo, if you see the right hand side, that is the cloud side of things, and when you move towards the left hand side where the MCUs, IoT devices are, that's the edge side of things. So that's kind of like the explanation on that.
Okay, so this is what the cloud platforms works, right? So
how it works.
So when it comes to Microsoft, they contribute a lot of things right now. I think most of the companies are, that means all of the cloud service providers are, it's in a race, right? One is releasing technology, the other one is going back with other technologies as well as soon as possible. So these are the things. It's a competitive world. Let's say about 10 years back, it was very hard. I said this same note from the last session as well. It was very hard for us to take a paper-based customer to computer-based.
Oh, exactly. Right? Yes. Yeah, that's correct.
So from that perspective till now the subject has changed to cloud. So now it's very hard for us to take a customer to cloud because it's not in their location, it's in a separate location on a monitored location. So when you talk now, when you point out to Microsoft Azure, right? So it has expanded for the past few years a lot, right? We have now I think correct me if I'm wrong for the information that I'm giving. As I guess, we have now quantum computing as well available through Microsoft Azure, right? It was not a possibility about when this started, right? We had some issues like that. So now, to give an introduction to Microsoft Azure, right? What is the basic, that means, let's make it short so we can understand it properly. What is the basic word of Microsoft Azure and the ecosystem what they're having right now?
So to define what Microsoft Azure is, so Microsoft defines it. So Microsoft's vision of Azure is the world's computer, literally the world's computer. So what Microsoft Azure provides is, for those who are familiar with things like AWS, it's the same thing but different name, right? But for those who are not familiar with cloud computing but have some insight on IT, I'll simply explain. If you are a software developer, you're writing code. When you're writing code, you are deploying it somewhere, right? You hand over that to your DevOps teams or your data center team, right? So probably your code will run on your own data center, or you will rent out few servers from SLT, Mocktail, or someone like that. But however, these applications or the code will have to reside on somewhere, right? It can be your own on PC as well if you're really keen to run production level code on your PC. But end of the day, you have to run it somewhere, right? Now, the other thing is sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel. For an example, if you're someone who's working with machine learning, things like that, you don't have to, write from scratch how an AI algorithm per se, basically a instruction set on AI. So that's where Azure comes into picture. It can provide you that compute to run your code. Also, it can provide the pre-canned services for higher level functionality. Now, for an example, Office 365, you had an episode on Office 365. The demos and things you've seen on Office 365, that whole user experience actually is hosted on Azure, right? So that compute, that underlying network and storage for that beautiful interface is hosted in Azure. So in basic terms, if you're a developer and running your code in Azure, it's nothing other than your own running your code in Microsoft Data Center. And the difference is here we are not just talking about like running virtual machines, servers, things like that. We are leveraging things like PaaS and SaaS service. Now, for an example, Office 365 is a software as a service that I mentioned that is running on Azure. Now, for an example, if you want to run a SQL database, but without having to worry about patching, updating, managing all this stuff, you can use Azure SQL, which is a platform as a service offered in Azure. So these are the things that make up Microsoft Azure. And you were right. So they have now content computing and all those capabilities as well. And there are more than 55 data center locations, including the ones that have been announced in New Zealand as well. So in a nutshell, you're hosting your workloads in Microsoft's secure data centers through their public cloud offering.
Okay. So that's good, right? So when it comes to the data centers, I think Microsoft are moving to eco-friendly servers as well, right? I think I can remember the project correctly. I think Project Nautic, right? That bench underwater project.
Underwater,
yeah. So like that, a company contributing to eco-friendly services as well, we have to make that sure that they are going on these technologies as well, right? Now, when it comes to Azure to stream it down in normal way, a few years back, if our IT service is having a sample computer, we have to assemble the PC, we have to put the OS. It takes about 2 to 3 hours, right? The assembly time, the installation time, and it's very hard, right? Sometimes you have to go to the 10th floor without the lift. You have to carry the PC, and you have to set it up only for 5 minutes. They're testing and they're telling to that means deassemble the whole thing. But with Azure now, you have virtual machines available, so it takes only a few clicks away, and it's very easy for us to do that, right? So from that services to database services and all the that means we were working with multiple services to run one system earlier. But when you focus on Microsoft Azure now, all the things what we need to be done, it's in one dashboard, right? From hosting a website to doing virtual machines to virtual databases. So it came a lot of journey while we are having this talk right now. So we have I'm familiar with one of your slides regarding Azure Stack. What is Azure Stack actually?
Okay, so that's a great question. Now I'll move into the next slide, so you can, not the next one, the one after. So now think like this. The marketing pitch that I just provided is really great, but it doesn't work in real life very well if you have one of these constraints. For an example, if you are a government, right, you have rules in your constitution or your laws that says your data should reside on your soil. Now, I live in Australia, so we have a statewide regulations and also federal regulations which states that data should be on our continent. For an example, in Tasmania, there's a law that says the state data should be in the state data centers. Now,
Okay.
but there might be use cases where you want to use the same Azure services. Thinking like a mining company or a remote mining operation in Middle East, or a warship, a US destroyer in Pacific, or airplane, which needs the same Azure services, but it's completely disconnected from the environment, like internet or proper data center. Or take an example where you are old school, or you are that filing company where you are using manual files, right? So think like you are running all the Windows services and stuff like that. You want to move to cloud, but you can't directly move to cloud because you have to re-architect your platform. Now, in that case as well, I need an intermediary platform to restructure my code and then move into cloud. What Azure Stack? What Azure Stack Hub? There are like 3 products in this ecosystem. I'm talking about Azure Stack Hub now. Provides is Azure on your own data center. So it is an extension of Azure which provides a subset of services. So things like virtual machine, PaaS services, things like that in your own terms. So you can host it on your own data center, or you take it to a disconnected site. Even in the Sahara Desert, you can have something like a ruggedized version of Azure called the Tactical Azure Stack and provide the same Azure services. So it can be connected or disconnected. So basically, you are providing a subset of Azure services anywhere, whether it's connected or disconnected.
Yeah. So that means you can get the same Azure services, like it's a server, but in a way that Azure works.
So the Azure Stack Hub is actually an integrated system. There are about 4 to 16 servers in this. So what you see here is like a server rack, couple of switches and stuff, but what's running inside is the same Azure software. So in the base, there's Windows Server 2016 and things. Sorry, Server 2019 and things like that. But you are not focusing on that. You are focusing on the Azure side of things. So to explain further, I'll just showcase. So this is what a regular Azure subscription would look like, right? So you have different services. Now, for an example, in my case of SQL databases, if you create a database from here, that would be as a service. So you're not managing that like the server itself. Rather, you are managing the database itself, right? So there's a plethora of services available. And if you want to create more resources, there's a nice marketplace. So the Azure Stack experience is similar, but it doesn't have all the services. Like for an example, it doesn't have that Azure machine learning service readily available in Azure Stack. The reason is, as I mentioned, it's a subset of Azure services. And like I said, it's like just 16 servers. So you have to bring down that massive code into 16 nodes. So that's the explanation on that.
Okay, thank you for explaining regarding that. So to add more details regarding this, so Azure Stack can be deployed in any location, as you said. So
yeah, any location, yes.
This is like a private server, right? I mean,
yes. So this is your own version of Azure, right? You own it. The software is free. You pay an OEM like HP, Dell, Lenovo, or someone to build that system for you, but you own that hardware. The software is free from Microsoft, and for the services you consume, you are billed against your Azure subscription. I'll give you an example. If you are charged like $40 a month to run a A5 or whatever virtual machine in Azure, when you have an Azure Stack instance, since you're running it on your own hardware, you would be charged 1/10 of the cost. So that's how Microsoft made money out of this product. So you are registered against an Azure subscription. You are billed for that consumption. But since you are running that on your own hardware, you are not paying the same premium you pay for regular virtual machines or regular services.
Right. So like that. So another explanation I'm requiring is some of the questions that I get is now there are three cloud tiers. What you're talking about: public cloud, hybrid cloud, and private cloud,
Yep.
right? So can you just elaborate regarding these three cloud tiers? What are these features? Because some of them actually new to this subject. Because
Yes.
in some of the areas I have this issue when we're approaching customer, we have these
What is
questions.
private, what is hybrid, and what is public?
Yeah.
Okay. So think like this. Private cloud is something that you build from scratch using a base infrastructure. For an example, if you're using a Hyper-V, VMware, and OpenStack, that kind of a virtualized environment, that is the
Okay.
ideal example for a private cloud. So
Okay.
what happens in the private cloud is, now you provide that environment. So it's basically about software-defined storage, software-defined networking, and software-defined compute. And to add more autonomy to that private cloud, what you can do is you can add self-service. Now, in the case of VMware, you can use VMware vSphere and VMware ESXi, and you can add vCenter orchestrator, things like that, to make this a self-service cloud. In the case of Microsoft, you can use Hyper-V, Windows Admin Center, System Center, things like that, to make this a kind of like customized, but not highly customizable version. What you're offering basically is virtual machines, storage, so the basic pillars of compute. So when you move to public cloud, right? Yes, you can provide virtual machines, you can provide things like that. A part of that, you are providing PaaS services, SaaS services, things like that on top of that. And you are not maintaining that infrastructure per se. So if you are running a VMware or a Hyper-V environment, you have to maintain that underlying infrastructure. But in a public compute platform, you're not doing anything of that. Hybrid
Like
cloud, yes,
renting,
go
right?
on. Yeah, you're
Like
renting basically. Yeah. Hybrid cloud, to define a true hybrid cloud means you have to be able to leverage the same services from the public cloud
okay.
while keeping the control you have on prem. So for an example, when you're using things like Azure Stack and Azure Stack Hub and Azure Stack Edge, you are using the same Azure Active Directory. You can use your same email address, password you use for your Office 365 login to do that. So you have a unified identity. You have the same security controls that you have with Microsoft Azure in your Azure Stack subscription as well. The difference is it's running on your own data center, on your own hardware. Yes, you are doing some maintenance on it. So the role of Microsoft, the role of Microsoft in public cloud is to maintain that public cloud, right? So in the case of Azure Stack or a hybrid cloud, you are assuming that role. We call that as the cloud operator role. Um, uh, so that cloud operator role is present. So you are literally administering your own version of the cloud.
Okay. So we have a question from one of our viewers right now. So I will pop up for you. You can see it in the browser as well. So in this day and ages, what intelligence in cloud are much needed for organizations?
Yeah, that's Ashik, right?
Yeah.
That's a very important question. So now I've had a session like last week to a couple of university graduates in Sri Lanka as well. They one of the questions was, we are learning these subjects in the university. We are going to the industry. What do we need now? To be very honest, if I am a hiring manager or if I'm interviewing someone, um, I will pay close attention to what skills they have in terms of one of these cloud platforms. Reason is, now almost all the enterprises in the world have adopted some one or more cloud computing platforms, right? Now,
Okay.
your job role or the knowledge you need in that platform might be different. Now, for an example, if you're coming from a traditional sysadmin type of a background, you have to acquire the knowledge about how to become infrastructure engineer working with AWS, Amazon, or AWS, Azure, or Google, things like that, right? But if you are coming from a software development background, it's kind of different. You can be a regular, front-end developer. You can claim that you are full stack. You can say, I'm this stack, that stack. I've seen a lot of buzzwords. But in reality, you have to grasp all these concepts. I have a small demo to show you later in the discussion where using these technologies, right, you cannot define your knowledge to saying, okay, I'm just doing this. I'm not a developer. I can't write code, things like that. In this fast-moving economy and technological world, you must specialize one subject, but rather you have to have an understanding of all the topics that are available. There are things like AI, machine learning, augmented reality, advanced areas in cloud computing. And I mean, I know people usually when we were kids, it was said you have to have a degree in maths or engineering if you want to go to an area like that. But with the introduction of cloud computing, some of those advanced services are now available to us. So for an example, to build an effective machine learning model, you don't have to write it from the beginning. You can get a basic structure or a basic algorithm or a base algorithm from a public cloud provider, and there are data sets available in the public on the internet as well, and you can use that to train that model. So to answer the question, I mean, it really depends on what you want to achieve. Now, for an example, if you are a engineer who's interested in productivity or modern workplace kind of things, you have to have a little bit of knowledge about the software as a service platforms that are available there for that kind of workloads, like Microsoft Teams, Office 365, and there's a plethora of other platforms and tools available as well. But it really is about how further you want to go through into this maze. I mean, literally, this is a maze. These platforms are updating daily, and it's like we might say the day before that this feature is not available today, but the morning you get up, the next morning, that might be available. That's what we call the cloud cadence. So it's massive changes and rapidly expanding.
Yeah, that's true. No, for answering that your question, the update part, right? So I was having a training for Microsoft Teams one day. About 5 minutes into the training, I get an update regarding some of the features that we were asked, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So one of the option was raise your hand option and download the attendance list. So that was updated while I'm doing a training. So actually, it was a good point for me as well. While we were doing, it was backgroundly updated, and the app was updated, and suddenly it popped up, and I was thinking, what is this icon and stuff? Then I got to know that this feature has been gone up. So likewise, there are features updating day to day from all the platforms available for us. So as such. So now when you take to the competitors, where does Microsoft stands with the cloud service provider? We have Google Cloud, Amazon AWS,
and Azure. Yeah. So right now the reports claim that Microsoft's position in the public cloud space is number 2. There's a reason, because AWS was like 7-8 years ahead of them, started in 2006, if I'm not mistaken, with Amazon Web Services, right? So if someone comes and claims that you can do anything and everything in AWS, and AWS this, AWS that, and if somebody comes and say Microsoft this, Microsoft that, I mean, as a customer, it's kind of hard for me to believe that there should be any comparison between these 2 or 3 platforms, because if you have an Apple iPhone and if you take a Samsung Note or a OnePlus 8 or whatever, the feature set, hardware, and everything is same but different names, right? But what customers don't understand is that to have an effective system, you should not lock into one platform, but rather you should use the correct platform for the correct use case. There might be use cases where Amazon's AWS might be better than using Azure, right? We have to acknowledge the fact. There might be cases where, using Azure Stack would be beneficial for that customer rather than using something else. For an example, if I want to use an Azure service, no internet connection, I'm in the middle of the ocean, right? My only alternative is to use an Azure Stack Hub. That's it, right? There is absolutely no way that you can port another product into. So from a market share perspective, the other thing is, now people are really, saying, oh, when you say about Microsoft and things like that, these are proprietary software, so you're really logged in. I mean, come on. The Android you use on your phone is a licensed product, right? The Java you use for free, it's a licensed product under Oracle, right? There's nothing in this world or the economy we live in as like free as in beer, except the air we breathe in. Even water is canned water we consume, right? So I'm not too sure about the fact, more than 50% of the virtual machine workloads that is running on Microsoft Azure today are Linux based, right? So that gives you an understanding on where, from an ecosystem perspective, that Microsoft stands, right? And both of these companies have had a fair market share in both in different verticals. For an example, there's a recent win from Microsoft for a huge defense deal called Jedi with the Pentagon. So that was a huge win for them. So both of these platforms have their own strength and weaknesses. But as a customer, what you should select is the right tool for the right use case.
Okay, we have a question actually from one of our users. So I just posted so I can pop it out. You can understand.
Adaption
What
rate,
is
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. What is the adoption rate of Azure Stack compared to normal Azure subscription by customer? In which the scenario as Azure Stack good for a customer?
Okay, so if I can go back to my slide, I'll just give you an example. The adoption rate, it is like asking how much bandwidth I need. I'll be very blunt about that. Have you seen customers asking how much bandwidth I need? Can you tell that?
Definitely. I get this question recently because of Microsoft Teams adoption is good in Sri Lanka as well. So we have this question because some of our using Microsoft Teams have, that means the bandwidth issues and the data, because we have limited amount of data when you take a package in Sri Lanka. So because of that, we have issues in asking customers that how to control our bandwidth, what are the possibilities of doing this. So this question is common these days.
Yeah, so thing like that. If you ask about what is the adoption rate compared to normal Azure subscriptions by a customer, I have to disclose proprietary sales information, which I'm not entitled to do. But I'd answer the second question, whereas, what scenarios are good for a customer. Now, imagine that case of US government or any government who wants to use a massive cloud, but they're not allowed to go to the public cloud because of the restrictions. In that case, they have to run everything in their own way, right? So that the numbers might be billions, trillions, we never know. But as for the use cases, the 3 use cases you see here in the right-hand side, these are your stepping stones to Azure Stack Hub. If you are looking for your own version of Azure isolated, like a government, military, or financial institute, right? This is the answer. If you want to use the same Azure services due to regulatory or data sovereignty issues, this is the answer. If you want to do an application modernization approach, not go to public Azure straight away, take your regular, 3-tier applications and transform it to a microservice model and then move it to a cloud. So basically, use and landing platform, Azure Stack Hub is the right use case.
Yeah. So I think in this scenario, some of the industries I can guess is banks.
Yes, banks would be a good example because they're not fully allowed to go to public cloud. Now, they can go to public cloud front end services, things like that. But their data can sit in an Azure Stack Hub.
Yeah, that means when you're now, for example, in Sri Lanka also, I think Azure Stack is available or not. I can't remember. So I
ID
think
is available. Yes.
yeah, there are some of the things. I think SLT implemented some of the things. So I guess this is a good approach. While that means we have struggled. That means taking a customer to cloud, right? So
Yeah.
I think this is a good stepping point if you're going into Azure Stack Hub or the other series, the Edge stuff. So I think this is a good option for us to bring the customer to a that means a good grade of cloud services through our product line, I guess.
Yeah.
Right?
So if I move back and explain a little about what Azure Stack Edge is, now the
Okay.
Azure Stack we told is like an appliance, right? It's like a 42U rack, like number of servers. Now Azure Stack Edge is a one new single server.
Yeah.
It will provide you just enough compute. It can run Kubernetes. It can provide some virtual machine running capabilities, and it can be used as a network data transfer from edge to the cloud, basically as a storage location. So this is something you use in a remote site or a remote office, right? So it will provide you the edge compute, running few virtual machines, some containers, things like that. So when you have connectivity to the cloud, or if you want to manually transfer that data to the cloud, this appliance will act as the intermediate, right? We have another question. What's the best way to go about modernizing VMs or server-based on-premise app to Azure App Services? Okay, that's a good question.
Yeah.
So if I get this question correct, right, how do I modernize a regular 3-tier application into app services? Now, app service, it's nothing but a PaaS service where you can run your web or mobile app code. So for an example, if you have a traditional application that is written in .NET and you have a web front end on IIS, take the same code and put in to Azure App Service. That's fine. If you have a front end or an application that is written in Java, you can take the same code and host it in App Service, right? Without any changes. But think like this. Now, your application logic, right? Application logic. If you are running your application logic as a Windows service, like service-based Windows service-based application logic. So you are using things like MSNQ, right? At that point, you have to kind of, how would I say, re-architecture the code, because you can't run a Windows service inside an app service, right? Or another way you can do this is you can separate that application code from running it. You can have the front end in app service. You can use something like Azure Kubernetes service or any other containerized platform to run application code, but running the presentation layer on app service. So to answer that question, it's not about just lifting and shifting. There's no one DIY tool to convert a code that is running on a virtual machine into an app service. So if your what you can do instead is, if it's straight away running on IIS, like something like the web example I explained, with little to zero modifications, yes, you can move it to something like an app service. But if you have some legacy components like Windows services that are running the application logic, you have to dissect that, and sometimes that application logic you'll have to re-architecture, and app service might necessarily not be the best place to land that. Maybe Azure Kubernetes service, or maybe if it's an AI algorithm that you're trying to achieve, you might use Azure Machine Learning Studio or something else. So in my personal experience and industry experience, I would leverage Azure App Services for any front-end workloads. I would say it's like websites or any front-end material. But for the processing part of things, that could still very well be virtual machines, a Kubernetes containers running on Docker, running on a Kubernetes cluster, things like that. So there's another question from Prishan. Are there any improvements of Azure Stack with hyper-converged infrastructure? Okay, so Azure Stack leverages hyper-converged infrastructure. So what do you mean hyper-converged is, you have the compute, storage, and network capabilities on the same hardware that you're running, right? But the difference when it comes to traditional HCI versus Azure Stack is, with traditional HCI, what you do is, with traditional HCI, you can provide that, DIY virtual machine kind of a infrastructure. Now, I'll show an, how would I say? I will show you a image. Just give me a second, so that you can understand it better. All right. So now this will be an interesting example. Now, when you see this whole Azure Stack hub, Azure Stack HCI, and the Azure Stack tools that we've explained. Now here what you can see is with Azure Stack HCI, you have the hardware, you have the storage and everything, but the offers, the infrastructure as a service SKUs, you have to create yourself, right? With Azure Stack HCI and moving into Azure Stack, you can see that you are sharing the same Azure portal. Now, if you take the example of VMware or Azure Stack HCI, like Hyper-V and Windows Admin Center, you don't have that Azure Resource Manager experience or those tools, right?
Yeah.
As well as you're not managing this hardware. The hardware here and Azure Stack Hub, you're using the hardware. Like basically, you are you are managing the hardware, but you have that Azure ARM experience with Azure Stack Hub. But with HCI, you don't have that, Azure portal or ARM experience or those capabilities.
Right. So, Janaka, again, so we have these questions again regarding certifications. So I'm taking a little bit off the side. So regarding Azure certification, is it necessary for a person to do that? So if they are starting, right, we have viewers who are in the entry level of cloud knowledge. So is it essential for them to do the certifications in moving forward with Azure Cloud or any other services?
It really depends, I'll give you an example. I would interview someone, so basically we'll have a chat with someone to build a house. And someone might say, I'm a contractor, I have an engineering degree from MIT, like not MIT, MIT, like Millennium MIT. So I have a degree in Massachusetts Institute of Technology or something like that. Whereas someone else comes say, Game Baskinik, I have done so many, houses and projects, right? But I'm just a boss, like a boss. So who would I go with, right? Obviously, if I'm someone who's after paper-based certification, I will go with the guy from MIT, and I will end up with that guy might be MIT graduate from somewhere else, some other MIT as well, but who lacks the necessary experience. So in regards to certification, doesn't matter if you have a certification bundle or you have done all the certifications in the world. If you don't have the hands-on experience, you're going to get caught at some point. So I would say to start with, build out with the basic certification like AZ900, which gives you Azure fundamentals, which explains the theoretical topics that you need to know. Things like availability zones, what is HA, what is DR. I've seen people who are coming and talking about backup products, and when I ask, can you tell me what is RTO, what is RPO, they are going all sort of mumbo jumbo, right? I'm like, no, it's just a simple concept. What is RTO, what is RPO, and how your product helps us to achieve our RPO goals, right? So basically, have a good foundation. AZ 900 is definitely a certification that I'm going to recommend for someone who's very new to Azure. There's a free course on Microsoft Learn called Azure Fundamentals.
Yeah.
And depending on where you want to go, you can follow up certifications. The other thing is these certifications change every 2 years, role-based things like that. So you have to keep updating. It's not like just you pass a PhD and claim that I'm a professor or I'm a doctor. That's it. No, knowledge is a massive concept.
Expanding.
And expanding. And like Lord Buddha explained, or like he mentioned, the only inevitable thing is change itself. So if you are thinking of being like a government employee in Sri Lanka, doing nothing at all until you retire in IT, no, my friend, it's wrong. You have to keep adopting, and you have to know about other compute platforms as well. So basically about Azure, about AWS and Google. So you have to be multi-cloud person, because when you are the Azure person in your company and you know this is a product, if you have to do a comparison, if you're not very keen on the other products, and if you don't know what they do, you can't provide an effective verdict on what's the best product to use. There's another question again. Yeah. Can you explain about Azure Lighthouse? When do you think it will suit a customer? So Azure Lighthouse essentially allows ISPs, or like managed service providers, to effectively manage their customers' Azure environments. Now, there are a couple of models you purchase Azure directly from Microsoft with an EA agreement. If you're meeting a certain criteria like enterprise, pay as you go using your own credit card. The third model is CSP, cloud service provider. Now, the problem you have when you have with a cloud service provider is that your billing and things like that, everything is coming from that cloud service provider, right? So they have access to all those APIs and things like that. And sometimes the cloud service provider is asked by the customer to provide a base like environment. So basically, how do I say, clean up this environment for us and make sure that it's running tip-top, right? So using a product like Azure Lighthouse allows that CSP to have an effective insight into that customer's environment, apply Azure policies, apply blueprints, things like that. I don't know about you. I'm a, how would I say, I'm a perfectionist, right? Even I need my, everything perfect. So for an ISP, if you use something like Azure Lighthouse, you can, define things like Azure policies, Azure, blueprints, governance, security, and things like that in an effective way, so that you can replicate the same like baseline to other customers as well. That saves a lot of deployment time for you as well. But remember, it's good using a thing like that is good to set it up, so tidy it up, or basically to have the proper foundation. What the customer is going to deploy inside that subscription or landing site, it's up to them, right? Yeah. No matter how many policies you define, how many conventions you give to that customer, if that person is like, doing everything all over, it's up to them. But using things like Azure policies, you can say, hey, if you are from this certain department, you're not allowed to deploy your virtual machine in this certain location. You can do that kind of governance kind of things as well.
Okay, that's good. So this is, I think, Akib, you got the message regarding Azure Lighthouse. And now we have talked about infrastructure as a service, software as a service, and platform as a service. So there are many services actually. Microsoft Azure, I think, is one of the best cloud services, having more services than others. So if you have a comparison, right? So now, actually, I think it's one of the most available data centers worldwide, I guess.
Yes, it is. It's, I think, more than 50, but I can't remember the exact number. All I know is the Kiwis are getting two data centers down in New Zealand, but it's more than 55, and it's more than what's AWS and Google combined together.
Yeah, I'm getting the details right now. I guess it's. Hold on. I will tell the exact count. More than 60 plus regions are there for the moment. 60
Yes,
plus
that's right.
region, and I think the new data centers are coming in New Zealand, Qatar, Israel, and Mexico.
Mexico, yeah, that's
Mexico and Poland as well. Another
okay.
so we have more to come, and we have more in work as well with
Yep.
availability zones available. So the other question what I have is now when you're talking about cloud structure, what are these availability zones?
Oh, okay.
There's a
So
word comes up in everything, the availability zone.
So to answer your question, you have to think about, you have to go back about a few things.
Okay.
How do I provide high availability in Azure? Now, for an example, if you just deploy a single virtual machine in Azure, right, that will
Okay.
reside in a server somewhere in the cloud, in the Azure cloud, but
Okay.
you cannot be guaranteed 100% uptime, right? If you place that virtual machine into something called an availability set, that will make sure and if you deploy like two virtual machines in an available set, one virtual machine will reside in one rack and the other will reside in a different rack in the same data center. So that if one rack goes down for some unprecedented reason, you still have your service unhinged, right? Now, an availability zone in Azure means it's a unique physical location within a region. If we take
Okay.
the example of Southeast Asia, you have two data centers there, one in Hong Kong and one in Singapore. And if I create an availability zone in Southeast Asia, just one availability zone, now that availability zone I create will be created and it will be made up of one or more data centers in the same region, and each of these data centers or each of these data centers that are providing compute for this availability zone will have independent power, cooling, and networking. So what will happen there is, so basically it's like you are having 5-6 cars, right? Not
Okay.
parking in your single garage, but across few car parks around the same neighborhood. That means
Okay.
you can just take your key and take one car. So if it's in the same neighborhood, or you around your house, few garages of your friends, relatives, and things like that, you can take a car and go, right? Same concept, where it's a unique physical location within the same region, but independent infrastructure is provided to that location. That's what an available zone is.
Okay. That's a good explanation again. Okay. So give me a moment. I have another question. Okay. So when it comes to the security part
Yeah.
between the, let's say, now the second concern what we have is now the customer has trusted the company and we are putting our data on a location even the customer doesn't know. It's just Hong Kong.
So even the CEO in the company doesn't know. Yes.
Right. So so when you are putting our data, what is the guarantee that Microsoft Azure gives us when it comes to transaction between these technologies, right? We are putting our data in Azure, and what happens in between? Is it secure? Whether Azure helps us in this part?
Yeah. I'll ask a rhetorical question. You have the most secure data center in the world, and it just has a regular, key, which anyone from Main Street in Peta can replicate. And
Okay.
you leave that key. It's a nice key, somewhere in your house, and someone steals that key, knows that this is for that door, and just opens. So you have all those firewalls, you had all those antivirus and everything in the data center, but you have one stupid key left at your house, right?
Yeah.
So in the same way, the security in cloud is bifold. There's a responsibility to the customer, responsibility to the cloud provider as well. Yeah.
Okay.
What Microsoft will guarantee you is that physical security, layered security up until to the level you consume in the cloud. So they will make sure that nobody will have that key. The example I provided. They will make sure that they will have the latest firewalls and things like that for you for the data center. But if I put a virtual machine in Azure, give it a public IP address, put my username and password online, or give it to my girlfriend and she gives to someone else, and somebody logs into my computer, puts photos of a little kitten, and you go and complain, oh, Microsoft security is not, it's bad, they've just hacked my. Whose fault is that, right? The customers. So we can't point the finger to the vendor at that point, because we have neglected our duty. When it comes to the security on the cloud, Microsoft will, or any other provider who's providing the same, will make sure the keys to their kingdoms are closed, right? So what we have to make sure is that we, adhere some of the industry best practices to secure our environment. For an example, I've seen people who are just logging into production web servers just like that, right? That's not a best practice. You have a jump host or a bastion host, which is not in the domain or the environment, which is we call that a DMZ, demilitarized zone. That means it's like the border between India and Pakistan, right? There's a no man border there, right? And so from there you can log into your production machines. Why the DMZ is there is that when an inbound attack comes in, they will try to reach out to the DMZ, where from the DMZ you won't have any effective routes to your production network maybe, but the only thing you might have is a remote connection from you might be able to remotely connect to your production environment from the DMZ, but you have added additional layer to log into your production or your other environments, right? So things like that would make up your cloud security. I see another question there saying, can you explain benefits of Azure Stack Hub? The answer is self-explanatory. If I have explained that previously,
we did, but we will
I'll reiterate that. So if you, for some reason, cannot go to the public cloud or Azure, but you want to use the same Azure services, if you have data sovereignty issues, regulations, or your use case is disconnected, or basically you don't have internet, right? Or if you are someone who's going from zero to cloud and want a landing site, that is where Azure Stack Hub comes into play. There are no different benefits. So the cost would be about the same because you have to pay upfront from the hardware, right? But from a use case perspective, that is where Azure Stack Hub is ideal. I explained that it's an extension of Azure. It's not another version of Azure of sorts. You are running a subset of Azure services to comply with your to achieve the use cases that we just discussed.
Okay. Yeah. So let me see. I'm getting a question, I guess. For the moment, he's typing. Okay. So now we learned about how Azure works. What does then? Now the next part, what we have is now. Let me rephrase it. Give me a minute. I have the question prepared. Okay. Now we explained regarding how Azure works, what is Azure Stack and stuff. Let me see. The question is coming. Yeah, we'll give it a moment.
Yeah. Would you like to see? I promise that I'll give you a bit of a demo. I'll show you something that something that uses edge compute, not exactly Azure, but to give you an idea about how would an edge compute would look like.
Definitely. I would
Yeah,
love to see
I'm
that.
just gonna show my screen. This is a hobby project that I've done. So this is something called as a home assistant. So there isn't a light, switch, socket, whatever in my house that I cannot control from here, right? So this is I'm running a software called Home Assistant on an Intel NUC, which is connected to different sensors and things around the house, right?
Okay.
Now in this example, I have multiple motion sensors. So if I go here, I can see whether people have gone through several areas in my house or things like that. Now these sensors, these physical sensors, are reporting to the software that I'm running on that Intel NUC, right? So in that case, my NUC would be the edge compute module that I have. I'll give you an example. So I have a solar system running in my house, right?
Okay.
And it provides some statistics. So I'm pulling that statistics from that gateway into my home assistant to process, so that my solar system is my IoT device, and this home assistant software that I'm running on a NUC is my ticket, like the edge compute module that I have in my house.
Right. We have a question. Let me put up the question. Give me a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. It's a bit a long question, but we'll pop this up. Right. One person asked, can I know what is the private container space of Azure for build your own VMs inside that is secure? He's asking whether it's secure or Microsoft will see the data.
Oh, Microsoft will definitely see the data if you publish the username and password. That's my answer to that. Okay, I'll explain like this. Now, if you deploy even a virtual machine in Azure,
okay,
and you provide an administrative credential, whatever, since you are the person who has that credentials, right? You have access to that data in the system. Microsoft does not, right? That is why Microsoft cannot log into your virtual machine and do the task that you would normally do, right? But rather they can do a restart or whatever on your request if you want to do like if the virtual machine itself is crashed. So basically, if you want to pull the cable and up, you can ask Microsoft to do that, like a soft reset from the platform. But in the concept of a container, now what you do with virtualization is operating system virtualization or OS virtualization. With containers, you virtualize the application runtime. If you have a virtual machine running IIS, it has installed Docker or something like that, and have, I would say, like 10 containers running, but you have IIS installed only once on the host virtual machine, on the host. But each Docker container that you've been running can use the same application runtime, the IIS or the web server runtime, and present its own application and publish it to a different port. So similarly, if you provide someone the necessary credentials and access points to log into that container environment, yes, they can log in, but not Microsoft, not anyone can see the data unless you have specifically given the access to those persons, to that external party.
Oh, that's it. Okay, that's a good question. And the second part, right? Now, let's say we are putting our data into Azure, and in case we delete it or someone, for example, as we said, if we got leaked about the password and they delete the virtual machine or our database or stuff like that, is it possible for us to get it back by requesting through Microsoft?
Well, unless you have backed up your virtual machine, no. So basically, if you have to have a good HADR strategy, so highly available. We talked about HA with availability zones and things like that. But you need to have BR, backup and BR as well. So backup is not BR, BR is not backup. That's it, right? So I've seen people who are saying, where's the backup? Eka tamai needu. That's the answer, right? So backup is where you take a full like a point in time state of your virtual machine or your workload, so you can restore it in the same location. What if your data center or the machine caught in fire, right? At
Right.
that time, if you're running from Vellavatte, right, you should be able to run the same thing from Mana as well, because your Vellavatte data center got into fire, right? So that is where DR comes in. So you need to have a backup with Azure Backup, with Veritas, with Dell Protection Suite, whatever. If it was backed up, you can go into the point in time where it was stolen or whatever. But if it's a virus attack or something like that, that happened at what, 9:30, whereas your backup runs at 11:30 in the night, that means the backup you get is with the virus, right? So you can recover without the virus for the previous point in time where it was 11:30 the previous day.
Yeah.
Then you have like couple of hours of data loss there.
Okay, so I guess as I know that you have a tight schedule and you were agreeing to join this session, so we learned a lot.
It's Friday in Australia, so literally I'm spending time with you. This is 12 after 12 p.m. here where I live. We don't usually work on a Friday, so that's fine. Anyways, I have time for you.
Yeah. Okay. So I think our viewers got to know regarding what are the services available and stuff. So we had quite a good viewers and we had some good questions as well.
Some good questions as well. Thank you for those questions.
Yeah. So actually, what I when I started this, what I wanted to do is people are getting into trouble, right? Whether it's a partner, whether it's a customer, whatever the scenario it is, they are getting into trouble that doesn't know about the technology they're talking about. So what I'm doing over here is so to tell you frankly, I started as one session with Dileep, one of my best colleagues and your colleague as well.
Yeah, my colleague as well.
So we worked through this and it was a good session, and this is also a good session I had. So I'm planning to do more sessions, so I will put up the next session. We have why we need Microsoft genuine license. So that's a good part. The privacy, that means piracy in Sri Lanka has gone up more than we know, because I think in Facebook also now there are advertisements you can get Windows 10 for 990 rupees.
So I'll give you a very honest example. If you cannot afford a genuine Windows 10 license, right? Why do you? I mean, for me, it's not hilarious. I'm like, for me, it's kind of pity. You can use Linux if you don't have money, because it's free, right?
Yeah.
Whereas things like software piracy and things like that has led to ecosystem destruction. So yes, like you said, it's a very important topic.
Yeah. So so I will be sharing my screen. Give me a moment. I will share what we'll come up against. So okay, right. So I will be joined with Dhanusha Ranchigoda. He is the business manager of Microsoft for Trident Corporation. So we will be having the other session on 9th Tuesday, 10:30 a.m. same time. So you can get to know about Microsoft genuine Windows. What is this? And he said there are some offers to the customer, so as well with this situations and stuff. So we'll get to know more details regarding this matter. I'll be sharing the links and details in the future dates. Before, I think by tomorrow I'll be sharing the details. So thank you once again, Janaka, to spend time with us regarding sharing your knowledge and educating people regarding this. That means what is this cloud computing, right?
No worries, now anytime.
Yeah, now in Sri Lanka as well, our partners and Microsoft are working close together to bring cloud solutions to the customers. I think Microsoft has succeededly put multiple financial companies into Microsoft Office 365.
Yeah.
So in future, with this Azure Stack technology, I think they can more approach the customer and give a greater solution in working further with Microsoft as well as good services.
Yeah,
so
cool.
So for today, I think we will stop this session, and for future, I'm planning on getting few of others. Then we'll have a group chat regarding. So we will have a one-on-one chat with some of the other colleagues as well. So I hope you will be free for one of those sessions again in
Anytime
future.
for you, mate. You're my brother.
Definitely. So tell about Janaka, he's one of my mentor as well. He's pointing out you have to do this stuff, and he's keeping me up. That means most of the time he's telling, "But make a karapan, that's good," right? So he's keeping me focused, and to do this session also. When I called him and tell, "Can you join today?" He said Sunday he has some work, but Friday definitely I can do. So I was thinking, okay, Friday is a good day in Sri Lanka. It's Poson Poe, right? Some of us gone to temple, I guess. I don't think because it's curfew in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
So I what I wanted to do is share knowledge. So I'll be sharing knowledge that, for example, I have to tell you I have 8 sessions available for this month only. I started as one session with one person. Now I have 8 sessions. So we will be updating, and in my website I have the calendar updated as well. So you can join in that. So thank you once again, Janaka, for your sharing. And you are one of the best Azure people from Sri Lanka. So this is my idea, right? To get our technology specialist Sri Lankans from all around the world. I know most
Yeah.
of the guys.
The way,
I,
yeah.
I have more than about 10 guys from
Kohengiat
Australia.
langka kollek malli.
Definitely,
Okay, mate.
definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Okay, thank you once again, Janaka. We hope to see
Right,
you
cheers.
again. Okay,
Yeah.
so have a nice day, and viewers,
Yeah,
thank
you
you
too,
for
mate.
watching
Have a
this.
great weekend. Yeah.
Yeah,
Bye.
so thank you for this session. So we will have the next session on Tuesday, and follow up. We will be having another session on 14th Sunday as well. So I share the links again, detailed links. So this is our next session with Danusha Ranchigoda from Trident Corporation. So we'll be going live from Facebook and YouTube. Join that as well. For now, I'm signing off. Malith from Tech Talk with Malith. Thank you.